Good morning and welcome everyone to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church online worship. I'm Dayna Edwards, your intern minister, and my pronouns are she, her. Whoever you are, whoever you love, and wherever you're joining us from, whatever your beliefs, your gender identity and expression, your immigration status, or your life circumstances, we welcome you to worship this morning. If you're joining us for the first time today, please let us know in the live chat. If you're new or feel new, you're invited to complete our newcomer form that will be linked in the chat. Remember to mark your calendars for our book signing ceremony, May 24th at 9:30 a.m. Our book signing is a symbol of our covenant to be an involved member of our religious community and signifies our commitment to join with others on life's journey and joy, hope, and service. Hopefully, many of us have started our What's in My House spiritual practice. Here's my version. It's not too late to get started. My family and I have raised about $35 so far. We've counted our resources and counted about $35 worth of resources. So we'd love to hear what you're counting and what your resources are showing you and any reflections you might have. You can check out our website at cedarlane.org and search What's in My House for more details. And share your reflections on social media on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And let us know what you're learning about yourself from doing this spiritual practice. Now, turn and greet your neighbors at home and on the live chat. Our Cedar Lane youth singers, led by Jenny Crane, will bring us back with We Are a Circle. Please turn and greet your neighbor.
We are a circle, we are a web, woven together, thread on thread, interconnected. We are as one, you see, we are woven together, you and me. Up in the mountains, across the sea, out on the prairie, we're family, interconnected. We are as one, you see. We are woven together, you and me. We are a circle, we are a web, woven together, thread by thread,
I'm Karen Keel. My pronouns are she, her. If you have a chalice at home, you're invited to light yours now. Let us know in the chat where you are by sharing. The chalice is lit in your neighborhood, town, state, or wherever you are in the world. We light this chalice on the shorelines of life, gathered as one at thresholds unknown, surrendering to the mystery and blessing that surely awaits as we dispel fear and call forth love, light, and peace, crossing over the threshold together as one. This chalice is lit in Truro, Massachusetts. Most days after I get up, I check in with my, quote unquote, my eaglet in West Virginia. About 3 years ago, when my grandson Gus was living in my house, his father was teaching in Shepherdstown, West Virginia, which is near the live eagle camera at the National Conservation Training Center. Checking in with the eaglet felt like also connecting with Gus's dad, who was nearby teaching. I've now watched multiple generations of eaglets be born, grow, and leave the nest. I'm reassured about the continuity of life when I watch this cycle over and over again. From the camera, I can see the road far below and hear the wind, the sound of rain, and other birds in the trees. Once I saw a snake enter the nest, crawl across, and leave. The just-born eaglets are damp and nearly featherless. As they dry out, they turn into little fluff balls who mostly sit in the bottom of the nest and wait for their mother or father to feed them. Both parents care for the chicks. As the eaglets grow, they're more gray than yellow. They learn to walk on their clown-like enormous yellow feet and eat ravenously. They're bottom-heavy, which keeps them inside the nest. One parent will sit near or on the chicks if it's raining, windy, or cold. I can't tell which parent is male and which is female. At least once a day, a parent will fly off and return with a fish, a rabbit, or a possum. The flesh of the animal is ripped off by the parent and fed mouth to mouth to the eaglet chick. In a few weeks, as the chicks grow, they behave like human adolescents, grabbing food away from the parent who brought it and standing tall, flapping and flapping their wings. At this time, the black feathers begin to replace the soft gray, fuzzy ones. At this point, the chicks look awkward and gawky, the way my kids did in adolescence. The chicks practice flapping their wings and balancing on the edge of the nest for what seems like weeks. The parent often leaves the nest at this point and sits on a branch 6 to 10 feet above the nest, aware of the chick, but distant. It seems like the human experience of trying to protect the chick, but never knowing whether that protection will be enough. The chick pulls at the soft gray feathers with his beak until he's covered one day with glossy, iridescent black-brown feathers with little down remaining. That day, the chick is, in fact, a young eagle and flaps to a nearby branch, then back to the nest, very tentative little trips. The next time I look at the nest, it's empty. The young eagle has moved on to adult life. Apparently, they never return. I love watching the eagles cycle from egg to hatch, growing to chick, then fledgling and adult eagle. In eagles, the cycle repeats and repeats. Eagles don't form families like humans do. The fledglings return home for training for a few weeks after they fly, but then they're gone from their home nest. I don't think the parent eagles ask any more of their offspring after the offspring are grown. The recurring cycle of birth to growth to adult to departure and death, even as other generations preserve the eagle species, reminds me that that's what my life is too. When my grandson Gus was living with me, my dog died of old age. Gus will tell you that Dexter the dog's body is gone, but that his spirit is with us, and that he, Gus, holds him in his heart. He promises to do the same for me when I die. That seems about right to me, enough to ensure that my spirit will have a home in this place with those who loved me. I can ask for no more reassurance than that.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Abhijana Manchi. My pronouns are he, him, one of your ministers. And I am delighted to bring a favorite story of mine to you this morning. It's the story of Mullah Nasruddin and how he fed his coat. Now, this story comes to us from Turkey, and it is said to have written in the 13th century. Mullah Nasruddin was a real character. He was a Sufi philosopher, a mystic, and sometimes a troublemaker who loved telling wonderful stories in order to teach and help people learn life lessons. Anyway, this story happens when Mullah Nasruddin was working one day, all day, in his fields. And he had been working away, and his clothes and his shoes were covered in dirt and in stains. And also, it was the month of Ramadan, and the mullah, which means teacher, had been fasting all day long, and he was really hungry. And finally, it was almost sundown, and Nasruddin realized that soon he would be able to eat. And then Nasruddin remembered that the wealthiest person in town had invited him and everybody else to come to an iftar, a feast at his home. Now, Nasruddin realized that he was going to be late if he tried to go home and take a shower and change his clothes. So he just decided to go straight from his fields to the wealthy person's home. And on the way, the mullah was imagining all the wonderful food that he was going to be able to taste and eat at the iftar. And he thought, what a feast it's going to be, or what a party. And he imagined that he would be eating dates and lentils and chickpeas and olives and bread and naan and hummus and falafel and chicken curry and goat curry and shrimp biryani and all the desserts, the halwa and the date rolls and the fig rolls and the baklava. Oh my goodness, his mouth started to water. He couldn't wait to get to this wealthy person's house and dig into the feast. Now, when Nasruddin arrived at his home, the wealthy man opened the door and he looked Nasruddin up and down and up and down, and just had this scornful look on his face because he saw Nasruddin in his worn, ragged clothes down to his muddy shoes. And without a word of welcome, he gestured for Nasruddin to come in and just pointed him to go in that direction. Now, Nasruddin didn't mind it, and he just joined the crowds of people who were in the house, who were all dressed in their finest clothing, and the tables were full of all sorts of delicious foods, dates, lentils, and chickpeas, olives, and bread, and hummus, and falafel, and chicken curry, and goat curry, and shrimp biryani, and the desserts, halwa, date rolls, fig rolls, and baklava. Now, despite all his efforts to hurry, all the tables were taken. People rushed to those seats and sat down. And then they proceeded to break their fast with a date and some water, and then took a moment to go into prayer together. And soon after that, everybody jumped up to grab a plate and fill it with all kinds of food and come back and sit at their tables. Of course, Nasruddin could not get any food because everybody was crowded around the tables. And every time he tried to, he was pushed away and he had to reach over and get some food on his plate. And finally, he was able to get something to eat. And then he sat down with a few others, but nobody would talk to him. In fact, people started to move away from him because he was wearing these ragged clothes that were dirty and grimy and shoes that were muddy. So he sat down quietly, and then he picked up a fig and tried to eat, and then tried to say hello to his neighbor, but his neighbor just turned away from him. Now the mullah was feeling really hurt. He thought about it quietly for a while, and then he decided he was going to go home. So the mullah stood up and went home. And then a few minutes later, the mullah returned. And what was he wearing? This fancy coat. And he looked really clean and radiant in his beautiful shiny coat. And this time, the host welcomed him with a big smile on his face. Come in, greeted the host. And as Nasruddin entered, people waved and called to him saying, yo, Nasruddin, how's it going? Come on over, come sit with us. So Nasruddin thought about it. And then he went and got some food on his plate. And then he sat down quietly. And then he picked up this plump date and then proceeded to put it into his pocket, saying, eat, coat, eat. And then he picked up a delicious samosa. And then he gave it to his coat and he said, eat, coat, eat the samosa. And then he took some chicken curry and he tried to feed his coat with some chicken curry. And then he got some goat curry and then some shrimp biryani and started feeding his coat. Now people at this time stopped eating and started watching the mullah, and they couldn't believe their eyes. They thought he was going nuts. And then came the desserts. Now mullah loved halwa, which he then proceeded to take a spoonful and then proceeded to feed his coat. And then he took some fig rolls, delicious fig rolls, and then he fed his coat. And then he took some date rolls, and then he fed his coat. And then he took some cashew cookies, and then he fed his coat. Now, by this time, everybody thought the mullah had completely lost his mind. And they started saying, Mullah, why are you feeding your coat in this manner? What on earth are you doing? Why don't you eat your food? Well, replied Mullah Nasruddin, when I first came to this feast in my old farming clothes, I was not welcome. No one would speak with me. But when I changed into this fancy coat, suddenly I was greeted warmly. I was invited in. You made place for me. You fixed me up with a plate of wonderful food. So I realized that it was not me that was welcome at this party, but my clothing. So I am feeding my coat. And there ends the tale. Now I'm sharing this story, especially during Ramadan, to remember those, our Muslim neighbors and siblings who are fasting, to also remember those who are giving to charity and caring for the hungry, and for the reminder that faith is demonstrated by action, not by what we wear. Thank you for listening. Now, as we move into our musical offering, we celebrate the diverse ways that musicians are co-creating during these challenging times. The song that we're about to hear, We Shall Be Known, is performed by Thrive and has gone viral on social media. And the musicians who created it, Mamuse, have generously shared their gifts to inspire, heal, and comfort the world.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. Yay.
We gather each week to bear witness to our joys and sorrows as companions on life's journey. If you'd like a joy or sorrow lifted up during the service or a prayer request, I invite you to send it to pastoralcare@cedarlane.org. Cedar Lane also has a minister's discretionary fund to provide confidential emergency support for members who are in financial need. Please reach out to me or Reverend Katie. And now let us center ourselves, inviting our mind, body, and spirit into the space made sacred by our presence and the presence of the holy, in which we live, move, breathe, and have our being. In this sanctuary of caring that connects us across space and time, we hold in our hearts those for whom parenting is a primary spiritual practice, those who are mourning a loss, those who live with grief or chronic pain, with illnesses seen and unseen, those with mental illness or addictions, those who have suffered abuse or injustice, those who have experienced job loss or face financial insecurity. Within our Cedar Lane community, we mourn the passing of member Steve Murphy, who died on Friday due to complications from COVID-19. We hold in our hearts the Warman family, Barbara, Tim, and Gwen, as they mourn the loss of their beloved brother, brother-in-law, and uncle. We hold Candace Haga and her family as they mourn the passing of her 93-year-old aunt, Marcia Fogel, after a brief struggle with leukemia on Friday in California. We hold Susan Henry and her family in our hearts as they mourn the passing of her brother Bill after a car accident. We lift up prayers of healing for Wangari Kamav's dear friend, Sogra Abasade, who is recovering from a heart procedure at Suburban. We are glad Dave and Vivian Edfors have fully recovered from COVID-19. We celebrate with Kathy Napper and John Gubbings the birth of their newest great-granddaughter, Delaney Mercy Moorman, on May 7th, to Colette and Justin Moorman. And we offer our hearty congratulations to Zoe Persons, youngest daughter of Tim Persons and Mary Catherine O'Donnell, who was inducted into Phi Beta Kappa and graduates summa cum laude from Eckerd College this weekend. Our caring extends beyond Cedar Lane to others whose lives are lost and whose lives are impacted by violence and the COVID-19 pandemic in our nation and in our world. Holding them, holding all the joys and sorrows we bring, let us now join our hearts in prayer or reflection. Nameless one of many names, Spirit of life and love that will not let us go, God of our inner searching and our uncertainty, be with us and among us today. Help us remember the extent of our resilience and the ways we can go deeper. Help us tap those wells of strength and persistence that lie within. Help us find the practices, the rituals, the mantras, the prayers, the movements, the peace. Help us find a path that we can follow for this time, a path along which we can remember truths we have forgotten, find forgiveness we have been needing, connect with the loving kindness that the world needs, discover the courage that our vision demands, and the peace for which we have been yearning. Help us as we recognize how we are all in this together. Help us to live in the presence of grief and despair, and in the presence of wonder and beauty and joy too. Help us, most of all, to see our own lives connected to others, those at risk, those who are the most vulnerable, and reach out with love and compassion. Be with us, O Spirit, no matter where our journey takes us. Remind us that we are never alone and that truly we need each other to survive and to thrive. In the name of all that is holy and life-affirming and life-sustaining, we say, Shalom, Salam, Om Shanti, Amen, blessed be. As we spend some time in silence together, those who are mourning a loss or marking the anniversary of a loss are invited to rise or to share a loved one's name in the chat, in mourning and in memory. Let us enter the silence together.
Each Sunday, we take up an offering to support the mission and ministry of Cedar Lane. The offering, much like the signing of the book, is a symbol of our covenant to each other. Our offering reminds us that our congregation belongs to us, to each of us individually, as well as to the whole of us. It is a weekly embodiment of the idea that a group working together for justice and love is exponentially more powerful than any one individual. This week's offering will support the vital and thriving programming of Cedar Lane. So much has changed in the past few months, but one constant is the presence and love of our Cedar Lane community. You might be engaging in our online small group worship, or doing a craft and story with Stephanie or Isabel, receiving a call from one of our pastoral visitors, or staying connected to our music ministry with the help of Henry, Jenny, and Jasmine. Maybe you've had someone from Cedar Lane pick up groceries for you, or drop off a mask, or make a meal for you. Maybe you're inspired by the stories in this worship to look at life just a little bit differently. We are more than just a building. We are the connections that we have to one another. Your financial contribution to the ministry of Cedar Lane is one way we share our gratitude for all the work this community does. We who have been blessed with this place may also choose to bless it. We hope that those who have received stimulus checks and are able to donate some portion of those funds will consider donating them to Cedar Lane. Please give generously as you are able. You can give by the electronic means of our modern times, text, online giving, PayPal, or QR code, or by the ancient spiritual practice of mailing a check to the church. As the Cedar Lane Quartet with accompanist Dr. Jasmine Lee sing Draw the Circle, we invite you to share your offering.
Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide.
In your sadness and in your grief, all this pain, it seems there's no release. We will hold you until the stones have silenced. Draw the circle wide.
Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing walking side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide.
In the words of the Reverend Lynn Unger, through the work of our hearts and the work of our hands, our love is made real. We are grateful for all that you bring and share at Cedar Lane to help make love real in the world.
Maxie lived in 3 small rooms on the top floor of an old brownstone house on Orange Street. She had lived there for many years, and every day was the same for Maxie. Every morning, 7 days a week, at exactly 7 o'clock, Maxie raised the shades on her 3 front windows. Every morning at exactly 7:10, Maxie's large orange cat jumped onto the middle windowsill and sprawled there in the morning sun. At 7:20, if you were watching Maxie's back window, you could see her raise the shade to the very top. Then she uncovered the bird cage. On the perch inside the cage was a yellow canary. She was waiting for her water dish to be filled, and it always was, if you were watching at 7:22. At 8:15, every morning, Maxie's door opened with a tired squeak, and Maxie's old leather slippers made slapping sounds as she walked down the 4 flights of carpeted stairs to the front door. Outside the front door were the bottles of milk in a container. Maxie always tried to hold the door open with her left foot while she reached out to get her milk. But every morning, it was just a little too far for her to reach. The door always banged shut and locked behind her. So, at 8:20 every morning, Maxie rang the bell marked Superintendent. The superintendent, whose name was Arthur, would open the door for Maxie and let her in with her milk. Only Maxie and the man at the grocery store knew what she ate for breakfast, but everyone knew she drank tea. Because at 8:45 every morning, they could hear the whistling of her tea kettle. How Maxie loved that whistle. She loved it so much that she let it sing out for 1 full minute. Dogs howled, cats whined, and babies bawled, but everyone knew that when the whistle stopped, it would be 8:46, and it always was. The mail carrier knew more about Maxie than anyone else did. He knew that Maxie had a sister in Chicago who sent her a Christmas card every year. He also knew when Maxie planted the flowers in her window boxes, because every spring he delivered her seed catalog. Then a few weeks later, he would deliver the packets of seeds. Every morning at 9 o'clock, Maxie walked down the stairs for the second time in her leather slippers. She went outside, waited for the mail carrier, and then she climbed the 4 flights of stairs again, resting at each landing. When she got to the top, Maxie went into her apartment, and the door closed after her with the same tired squeak. One afternoon at 1:05, just as she did every afternoon at 1:05, Maxie moved the bird cage with the yellow bird in it to the front windows. It was shady and cool there now. The large orange cat moved to the back window and sprawled there, soaking up the sun that matched the color of his fur. "You're perfectly happy lying there, day after day," she told the cat. "All you ever want to do is move from one windowsill to the other and watch the world go by. But you don't need anyone, and no one really needs you, but you don't seem to care. But I care. I'm not a cat, but I might as well be." That was Monday. On Tuesday morning at 7 o'clock, the 3 shades on Maxie's front windows and the one on her back window remained down. At 7:10, the large orange cat was still asleep at the foot of Maxie's bed. And at 7:30, there were no sweet warbling sounds. That morning, no one heard the sounds of Maxie's leather slippers on the stairs, and her tea kettle was filled with empty silence. At 9 o'clock, the mail carrier came with the Daily Mail. He had a seed catalog for Maxie, and he waited for her to come down the stairs. Since she didn't come down, and this was most unusual, he decided to deliver the catalog to her door. He climbed the 4 flights of stairs, knocked, and waited. But there was no sign of Maxie. At 9:03, Mr. Churchill, who lived on the 3rd floor, came hurrying up the stairs. At 9:05, Mr. and Mrs. Morehouse got there from across the street. At 9:07, Ms. Trueheart came over from next door. Susie Smith came up at 9:10 with her twin brothers. 5 members of the family on the 2nd floor made it up by 9:13. Then came Arthur, the superintendent. By 9:17, there were 17 people, 3 dogs, and 2 cats, all waiting for Maxie to open the door. And when she didn't, they all went in. They found Maxie in bed as more people came up the stairs. Someone called a doctor, and by the time he got there, there were 42 grown-ups and 11 children in Maxie's small living room. The doctor examined Maxie and said, Maxie isn't really sick. She's lonely. She doesn't feel loved. She doesn't feel that anyone needs her. And then Miss Trueheart leaned over Maxie and said in a loud and bold voice, Maxie, every morning I wake up when I hear that bird. Then it's my job to wake my husband. He has the morning shift at the corner diner and he's still asleep. Why, there must be at least 75 people at the diner right now, waiting for their breakfasts. They'll all have to go to work on empty stomachs, all because you and that yellow bird didn't get up like you normally do. And Mr. Churchill, the bus driver, said, the school bus never came this morning. I didn't wake up on time. I never heard Sarah Sharp's footsteps on my ceiling. Well, Sarah Sharp was a nurse who lived just above Mr. Churchill. There were a lot of people waiting for her right now at the hospital, and she always got up when she heard Maxie's door squeak. Mr. and Mrs. Morehouse both had very important jobs, but they had missed their train that morning. Their alarm clock was Maxie's window shade. The superintendent said, I haven't swept the front steps this morning. I overslept because Maxie didn't ring my bell. I hope no one will complain. They all talked about it and decided there must be about 400 people who needed Maxie, or who needed someone else who needed Maxie every morning. Maxie smiled and got out of bed. Maxie made a pot of tea. In fact, she made 5 pots of tea. Every time the tea kettle whistled, dogs howled, cats whined, and babies bawled. Maxie listened and thought about how many people were being touched by these sounds. Her sounds. And by 9:45 that morning, Maxie had served tea to everybody, and she was so pleased. The end.
I could tell the world just one thing, you're all okay. And not to worry, 'cause worry is wasteful and useless in times like these. I won't be made useless. I won't be idled with despair. I'll gather myself around by faith, for the light does the darkness most fear. My hands are small, I know, but they're not yours, they are my own. But they're not yours, they are my own, and I am never broken. I will get down on my knees. I will pray. I will get down on my knees. I will pray. My hands are small, I know, but they're not yours. They are my own, but they're not yours. They are my own. I am never broken. Not yours, they are my own. They're not yours, they are my own. I am never broken. We are God's eyes, we are God's hands, we are God's eyes, we are God's eyes, we are God's hands.
Thank you so much, Jenny Lynn, for your beautiful rendition of one of my favorite songs. So I have a dish towel and it says, "Heal the world, cook dinner tonight." My whole life, I've picked up pieces of spirituality and theology from some very unlikely places, like dish towels. And also by looking around my grandmother's house in the housing projects of Cambridge, Massachusetts. That's where I saw the Last Supper in the form of a painting on a clock. She taught me the power of prayer and how lighting candles to the right saint and saying the rosary could cure cancer, bring money when times were desperate, and ward off the evil eye. She was my connection to an ancient Celtic way of being that disguised itself as Christian. She also used to make pancakes into squirrels and rainbows, fish, and Mickey Mouse. And when I was a kid, I thought it was magic. I didn't know she was doing it because she had learned how to make things last, how to make boring things fun, because she didn't have the money to do otherwise. So I use the soft blue and purple cotton of my dish towel to dry my hands as I begin my own creation. My towel giddy with anticipation and smiles, and it says, "Heal the world, cook dinner tonight." I do subscribe to dish towel theology, a theology of the process of co-liberation via the kitchen table. For me, some of the most holy, most sacred, most divine moments occur in creating a meal, savoring it, and then cleaning up afterwards. It's a complete cycle of creation and destruction, embodying both life and death while holding all the complexities of the senses and relationships and the messiness of life. Joy Harjo captures the sacred nature of the kitchen table in her poem, "Perhaps the World Ends Here." She says, "The world begins at the kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live. The gifts of the earth are brought and prepared, set on the table. So it has been since creation, and it will go on. We chase chickens or dogs away from it. Babies teethe at the corners. They scrape their knees under it. It is here children are given instructions on what it means to be human. We make men at it. We make women. At this table, we gossip, recall enemies and the ghosts of lovers. Our dreams drink coffee with us As they put their arms around our children, they laugh with us at our poor falling down selves. And as we put ourselves back together once again at the kitchen table. This table has been a house in the rain, an umbrella in the sun. Wars have begun and ended at this kitchen table. It's a place to hide in the shadow of terror and a place to celebrate a terrible victory. We have given birth on this table and prepared our parents for burial here. At this table, we sing with joy, with sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. We give thanks. Perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating of the last sweet bite. Perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating of the last sweet bite. These days, it feels like we're right on that precipice of that last sweet bite. Or perhaps we can heal the world by cooking dinner tonight. I wipe the counter with my dish towel after a splatter of oil pops off the pan, crackling, reminding me that unpredictable things happen sometimes. Theologian Dr. Ada Isase Diaz describes the concept called lo cotidiano, that is, finding the holy in daily life, in the experiences of women, specifically Latin American women. Her work was revelatory to me. It allowed me to glimpse the holy in my own daily life. Lo Cotidiano celebrates a uniquely Latinx experience, and it is important for white women like me to be in conversation with liberation theologians and to name the places that have resonance. Dr. Isasi Diaz writes, our emphasis on lo cotidiano as a way of knowing has to do in part with the need to rescue Hispanic women's daily experiences from the category of unimportant. Somehow, before reading her words, I had internalized my own experiences as a woman to be unimportant. I had learned somewhere along the line that the experience of domesticity was unimportant, not to be valued as be as valued as being in the outside world, working, competing with men. To read and hear about a theology that embraced the struggle of daily life as a legitimate way of knowing spoke to my soul. I felt so affirmed to hear from Dr. Isasi Diaz that finding a way to feed and clothe their children and to keep a roof over their heads was a part of lo cotidiano, because I had borne witness to that struggle as a child, and I was living it out in my own life as an adult. I had seen God present when I was 6 years old, sitting under a blanket in the backseat of our old car. I had seen God in the people who pulled over to jumpstart our car battery on several piercing cold New England winter mornings, when my mother worked magic just to get us to school and herself to work before the sun had even risen. As I place my dish towel over a pot of cooked food to keep it warm and begin to set my plates, my dish towel whispers, "Heal the world. Cook dinner tonight." In those moments when I'm creating a meal for my family, I feel connected to the generations of women that came before me, who stood over a hot pot and added to it whatever they had in their pantry. I feel connected to the women across the world who are, by and large, the ones creating the meals for their families. My bare feet on the ground as I move around the kitchen, I feel the earth in a way I don't normally experience when I go through my day. I feel more in sync with the natural rhythms of the day, more grounded, more centered. There's a moment of quiet meditation that occurs as I cut the peppers and onions that inevitably make it into every meal that I cook. A moment when I taste the salt from the tears that the onions induce, when I feel a sense of emotional cleansing. Making a meal is as much about the process as the product. It is about both the process and the product. A process that was stolen from my family for 2 generations by poverty and post-traumatic stress disorder. So yes, as I create a meal for my family, I am healing and I am engaging in a deeply spiritual practice. Heal the world. Cook dinner tonight. My dish towel reminds me one more time as I shake it open to wipe the gunk from between my toddler's cafe au lait colored hands before he plunges them into his rice and beans. Cooked from the same recipe for rice and beans that my mother-in-law made when he was born. The perfect complex mixture of both starch and protein to heal and nourish my postpartum body, sharing her wisdom with me and thus with her grandchildren. My theology of liberation via the kitchen table challenges me and so I will challenge you to heal the world because we so badly need healing right now. Find the moments in your life where you're already creating and start doing them more intentionally. Just like Maxie from our story. Make tea, make a meal, make a painting at your kitchen table. Create with ritual and reverence. Create to liberate yourself. Create to heal yourself. Create to talk to your ancestors and to nourish your future. I challenge you to create in solidarity with the 140 million poor and low wealth people who live on the threshold of survival, more now than ever. Let's honor the creativity and sacred work of those who make a way out of no way, those who extend the leftovers to make them last an entire week, those who make artwork out of pancake mix. I invite you to share a picture of your meal, your recipe, your story of what makes your meal holy and sacred, just like the one I did with with my mother-in-law. And use the hashtag feed the movement and hashtag poor people's campaign so we can find your story, find your picture. In each act of creation, you are in conversation with God, the spirit of life and the divine. May it be so.
Open the window, children. Open the window now. Open the window, children. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, let the dove fly in. My
sky.
Open the window, let the dove fly in.
The only border close you in is the border in your mind.
Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, children. Open the window now. Open the window, children. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Some people have money, some people have none. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Why think it's so funny if your heart's gone numb? Open the window, let the dove fly in.
This big old world is in a great big mess.
Open the window, let the dove fly in. Let's open the window, find peace and rest. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, children. Open the window now. Open the window, children. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, let the dove fly in.
Before we close out, I want to express my immense gratitude to everyone involved in making this worship happen. I'm always in awe of professional athletes because they make their sports look so easy, but really it takes years of preparation, practice, and training to make it look that easy. The same is true of the excellent worship team and AV team that come together to make our worship happen every week. Thank you to our volunteer AV team, Mike Morris, Don Woodruff, Todd Chernikoff, and Michael McCrickard. Thank you to Rebecca Knocktrieb for the in-gathering slides, and thank you to Karen Keel, Stephanie Williams, Abi, and Tim for your contributions to this service. Our closing words are from the poem Be of Use by Marge Percy. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bag along, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire must be put out. The work of the world is as common as mud, botched. It smears the hands, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn are put in museums. But you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry and a person for work that is real. Go, submerge yourself in the task. See your water pitcher for the work of art that it truly is. Find satisfaction in that thing that you are doing. Blessed be and amen. After the postlude, we invite you to join us for virtual coffee hour on Zoom.
We are singing.
Woo!